You're listening to Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions on product and business strategy. And now, here's your host, Bob Caporelli.
Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies, just like yours. Well, welcome back, strategy creators. Thanks for joining us on another episode. I'm going to start this episode with something a little different. I never really do this in the beginning of shows, but I probably need to start doing it. As those of you who are regular listeners of the show know, I just recently founded a company called Strategy Generation Company. I've been doing strategy training and so forth for many, many years, both in my corporate life and then also as president of a small training company that I was part owner in. But I just recently decided to go out on my own, started my own business called Strategy Generation Company. That company is now sponsoring this show. And usually I just jump right into the questions because this show is really about providing a free resource to people. I want to just keep it that way as much as possible. But I know a lot of you also may be interested in taking workshops and training and having other resources available to you that might be paid resources. And we could do all of that through Strategy Generation Company. So through that company, we offer workshops, training, strategy development. We have this great product called the Strategy Storyboard Session, where we kind of get with you and your team and help you storyboard your strategy, make sure that you can put all the pieces together into a way that you can communicate it easily and execute it easily. So really a lot of great programs and products there. So if you're interested in any of those, please go out to strategygeneration.com, check out what we have to offer. And of course, you can click on the contact form if you have any questions or are interested in talking more about that. So we hope you'll go there and check that out. But back to the show. And this week we have another great question, which I will get right to, which is, Dear Strategy, what are the strategies to help drive consumer needs into product benefits to go to market faster? Wow. So there's a lot of things that's going on in that question. So I want to try and answer it as I usually do in sections at a time. First of all, there's this question around driving consumer needs into product benefits. So, how do you take the feedback of customers or understand the needs of customers and incorporate that into your product in some way? And there's a lot of techniques that we've talked about on this show and in the blog about doing this directly. But and I'm sure I've talked about this before on the show, but just in case I haven't, I don't remember, to be honest with you. But I like to put gathering customer feedback or understanding customer needs into three separate layers or three separate levels. Level one is what I'll call unsolicited feedback, right? So that's when you as a company or a business, you kind of wait for people to approach you and tell you how they feel. As odd as that sounds, it's actually one of the most common ways that companies gather feedback. So if you think about, customers that are writing letters to companies, if that's even done, or sending emails to companies, or probably in a more modern world, writing reviews about companies, right? Those are all examples of unsolicited feedback that customers would give to companies. And it's great to take all of those into account. You should be reviewing them. You should be acting on them. But I would say if it's the only type of feedback that you're relying on, you're missing a huge part of customer feedback. And the reason you're missing a huge part is because people will generally only reach out to you on their own if things are really extreme, like if they really love what you did or really hate what you did. It's very, very uncommon that people will kind of reach out with the things that aren't really bothering them or on their mind directly, right? So relying on unsolicited feedback is important, but not the only thing you should be relying on. The second thing you should be looking at is looking at what we'll call solicited feedback. And that's when you go ask customers, right? So you've seen this a million times in the form of surveys, right? Talking to customers, interviewing them, finding out how they feel about certain things. And that's going to allow you to fill in that middle gap of, outside of the extremes. How do you feel about certain things that may not have been in your mind, but we'll put them on your mind and ask you about them. And so that will allow you to kind of fill in those gaps. I would tell you, though, that all of that is still kind of tainted feedback in a way, because you're kind of asking people to respond through your lens. You have kind of a predetermined thing you want to find out about, and you're putting that into their mind. You're implanting that into their psyche of your customers so that they're kind of answering that way. Plus, when they're talking to you directly, whether they're doing it in an unsolicited or a solicited way, believe it or not, they will filter the way that they actually feel about certain things because they know they're talking directly to you. So I always like to supplement those first two levels of feedback, again, unsolicited and solicited feedback, with the third layer, which is what I'll call observed feedback, right? And observed feedback from customers is when you go out and you watch them. Now, I know that sounds creepy, but you go out and you actually watch them. And if you're in an industrial space or business to business space, that might be a little bit easier because this is equated to, people installing your products, right? Using your products in the field. So you can go and do walks of the construction site or whatever else you're doing. And you can actually watch people that are using your products. Look how they're actually using it. Watch their frustrations. Watch the way that they're actually interacting with your products. And then when you go and ask them about it and do the level 2 and even level 1 feedback afterwards, you'll have better context, right? Because you'll have seen things firsthand and you'll have picked up on things that they never would have told you about. Another example of this, though, in the consumer space, this is done, right? So, secret shoppers is one that people know about when you're in a store and there are other people there and they're actually hired by the retailer or by certain manufacturers of products that are available there to watch what you're doing, and see kind of what your reaction to the products are, whether you're looking at the packaging a certain way, whether you're bypassing the packaging on a shelf, whether you read it and observe it or feel it and touch it or whatever else you're doing. So you could do that as well. A lot of consumer companies will also do controlled focus groups. Now, focus groups kind of border on level 2 and level 3 feedback because focus groups, it is a controlled environment, but you could actually arrange for visits where you're just actually observing consumers using your products. And even if it's a little more controlled environment, you're still picking up on things that you wouldn't be able to pick up on in a survey, right? So all of those feedback mechanisms are ways that you can gather information and incorporate it back into the product requirements, choosing which things you want to address and which ones you don't. And I can tell you the level 3 is really where you're going to get those customer needs that people didn't even know that they had, right? Or problems they didn't even know that they needed to have solved. Because when you observe things that they're not always consciously aware of, you could actually incorporate some solutions into your product that they would never have asked for as customers. So that's an important thing to be thinking of as well. So that's kind of the first section of the question is how do you help turn consumer needs into product benefits? Use some of those techniques, and then you can prioritize the needs into features and then decide what you want to actually incorporate into your final product. But the second part of the question, which is subtle, right, is to go to market faster. Now, this one is a little bit more difficult, right? Because all of these feedback mechanisms take time. And if your main goal is to get a product out quickly, I would tell you may be in danger of putting your own needs above the needs of the customers. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and address customer needs as quickly as possible. And I'm certainly not saying that you shouldn't be, competitive in trying to get some competitive advantage of being first to market. All of those things are really great things to do. And I would definitely encourage that if you make this customer feedback gathering a normal part of your DNA, you're going to naturally go faster than many of your competitors. So all that stuff is good. But I'll stop short of saying that you should be focused mainly on getting your features out to market quicker than anybody else, because that could cause you to shortchange certain features that customers would otherwise have cared about. Sometimes the best products take time to develop, right? Sometimes the most important problems that need to be solved take time to solve. And customers are generally willing to wait for something when they didn't even know that it existed, right? You're not going to bother them. If they didn't know that they had the problem and they didn't know a solution existed, then they're not going to be mad at you for not bringing it out sooner, right? When it comes out, it comes out. So the only reason that you would want to get it out faster is so you can beat one of your competitors, which is really more about you than about the customer. Again, it's important to an extent, but I would contend that if you have a product that really, really solves a problem better than anyone else, you've paid more attention than anyone else, take a little more time with it, get it right so that customers actually resonate with it. Because if you put out a product too fast, you put out something that doesn't work, it doesn't matter what problem it's solving. It doesn't matter if it's something that a customer would have otherwise needed. If it doesn't do what they needed to do, or it doesn't work the way it's intended, it's going to fall flat and it'll actually do you more harm than good. So be careful of that last piece, right? That said, if you do want to get products out faster than your competitors, make sure you're doing customer feedback on a regular basis. Many companies are not, right? And that could give you a competitive advantage. So that's where I would focus my time, is just doing it a lot more frequently. And that will naturally get you a competitive advantage in the marketplace. So hopefully that's a helpful answer. Again, lots of resources that I gave you at the beginning of show. So go visit at strategygeneration.com to check out some of those resources. Also, of course, if you have a question that you want to be featured on the show, just go to dearstrategy.net. You'll see the blog, you'll see the podcasts, of course, and then you'll have an opportunity to click on the upper right-hand corner, ask a question, and you can ask a question to be featured on this show. And tell your friends about us. Give us a review on iTunes or Android or wherever you're listening to this. Just go ahead and give us a review. Share it. Tell other people about it. We hope that this will grow and become a resource that more people will take advantage of. So while you're doing all that, don't forget to make time for the plan. And we'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caparelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.